Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Issaquah's Planning Policy Commission. I'd like to call the August 24th meeting of the Planning Policy Commission to order, and it is currently 6:37 p.m. And tonight it looks like we have our full bench, all of our commissioners here. Fantastic.
We have one missing commissioner, Chair Voice,
God.
and it's Commissioner Patterson is missing.
Oh.
He is excused absence.
Okay, I hope he doesn't see the first 20 seconds. We miss you, Jesse. Let's make it official. Do we have a quorum this evening?
Yes, Chair Voice.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. I will begin with public comment. And we're holding general public comment at this time for all general topics. So again, we're going to have a public hearing. We're going to discuss some agenda items, but for the good of the city, the commission, any general public comments, this would be the time to make them. Jared, has anybody signed up to make general public comment?
No one has signed up tonight to make public comment.
Great, thank you. Then we will move on to item 4, which is our public hearing. The Title 18 zoning table amendments. Tonight we are holding a public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the zoning table in Title 18. The public hearing works as follows. Staff will make a presentation. We, as a commission, will ask clarifying questions. We'll open the comment period, close the public hearing, and then as a commission, again, we will deliberate. We can go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:39 p.m. Valerie, welcome back. There she is. Please, I believe this part of the meeting is yours.
Hello, thank you. Still trying to adjust. 1 second, please. Here we go. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie Porter. I'm an associate planner with the Community Planning and Development Department. And here we're going to talk about updates to the development table in Title 18. So we're holding a public hearing to take public comment regarding the proposed amendments to the table, Title 18 development tables. So the proposal is to amend 2 tables. So the first table we're requesting to amend is the form and intensity table, which talks about building setbacks, lot coverage, height, and density requirements. The proposed change would change the density standards from 36 units per acre to limited by FAR ratio for mixed use residential, intensive commercial, and village residential zones, which are all located within the central Issaquah sub-area, and the change can be seen here in red. So just so you kind of get an idea where these zones are located, here is a map showing the impacted zones. Again, all located within the central Issaquah sub-area. So the reason why this change is being brought before the commission today, instead of with the annual land use code update, is because this change is very impactful. As it stands now, the form and intensity table conflicts with the table of permitted uses, which identifies what uses are allowed in what zones. So for instance, residential units are not allowed in the intensive commercial zone, but the density standard requirement is requiring residentials. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. So as it stands right now, the that is a conflict with the residential tables. So it was also discovered that the 36 units per acre requirement is difficult to comply with, especially for units that are or lots that are smaller within these zones. And it really has the potential to hinder development, which is the opposite of what we want. So it seems that during the land use code update, there was a footnote that was applied only to the urban core zone and was converted into the density requirements for 4 zones within the central Issaquah sub area. So the proposed change would basically convert the code back to the standard before the Title 18 update, and it will eliminate further issues. The next proposed change would be to the floor area ratio standards table, and we would also be adding a regulation back to the code. So currently, the floor area ratio standards are not listed in the table. And so the proposed amendment would basically reinsert the floor ratio standards for the MUR zone and reinsert the requirement for a minimum of 36 units to be constructed within the urban core. Again, this was originally a footnote in the Central Issaquah Development Design Standards. It somehow got converted to be a density requirement in the previous table, and now what we would like to do is take that out of the previous table and add it back into the code as just a regulation. So there are a couple issues that were discovered with this change. So the first one was with the table. So floor area ratio affects volume, shape, and spacing of a building on a lot. So if this requirement continues to not be in the table, lots within the MUR zone will be the only zone within Central Issaquah that do not have any floor area ratio standards, and future development will be out of proportion with the lot and surrounding development. So again, we would like the footnote that applied only to urban core to be basically added back. So in reinserting this development requirement into the code ensures that development will occur where we intended it, which is the urban core zone. So staff is hoping that PPC recommends approval for the proposed amendments to the Title 18 to revise table IMC 18404-100B, table mixed zones form and intensity minimum standards to change the zoning density, and to add the mixed use residential zoning standards to the table 18404-150B, mixed zones floor area ratio standards. So should a PPC approve or recommend approval, the next step would be to take this to the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee for a recommendation. And if they provide, and then the next recommendation would go to the City Council for a decision. All right, and that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Great, thank you, Valerie, for the great presentation. Wonderful to have you back. Commissioners, this is your time to ask questions to Valerie as our presenter this evening before we open it up to the public hearing and public comment. So we will deliberate again after the public hearing comments, but right now, feel free to ask any questions you have, if there are any. Oh, and please state your name for the record, since this is a public hearing. But
thank you, Valerie. Nina Milligan here. I just wanted to ask, and maybe I wasn't listening or reading very clearly, it seems like in one of the areas we are removing the 36 units per acre, and the other one we are retaining or adding it. And I didn't quite understand why we would have the FAR and the 36 units per acre in just one of those areas. Maybe I'm mishearing you. A little more information.
Yeah, definitely. So during the big code update, we think that someone took what was a footnote and basically converted it into the density requirements for these 4 zones. And so what this proposal is doing is basically taking the 36 per acre requirement, and we're basically putting that footnote back into the code. So we want to capture that because we want the 36 minimum requirement to apply only to the urban core zone, not to all of the zones within central. And so that's why in the density requirement, we're saying we want the development to be determined by the floor area ratio, because that's what it was when it was in the table of the Central Issaquah Development Design Standards. Does that answer your question?
May I add something to that, please?
Please.
That was put in way back in about 2014, maybe 2015, that regarding urban core and the 36 dwelling units per acre, because we had people who were talking to us about putting in developments that had a pretty low acreage or pretty low unit count, and that's where we wanted our units to go, so we had to set a minimum bar.
Thank you, Senior Planner Leeson, for providing that historical context, always important. Any other further questions from the commission? Commissioner Esmuere.
And just one question that, this is Commissioner Semwada. That 36 units is for housing, but also commercial use as well. That was the original intent.
No, the 36, you can see the condition. It is pretty much the same as it was in the Central Issaquah Development Design Standards, and it only applied to residential,
Okay.
not commercial.
Okay, and it's just essentially correcting it, place it in the right zone and
Correct.
aligning it with the floor area ratio. Okay,
Right. Yes.
thank you.
Which is why right now it applies to a commercial zone, which conflicts with the table of permitted uses. Yeah, permitted uses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions? All right, if there are no more questions from our commissioners, we will open the floor for public comment. Please remember that the public has 5 minutes per person to speak. Jared, has anyone signed up this evening to make and provide public comment?
Tonight, no one online or in person has signed up to make public comment during our hearing tonight.
Okay, thank you, Jared. If there are no more public you rely on the script a lot. Seeing there's no public comments, we will close the public hearing at 6:48 p.m. All right, so we're going to work through the proposed amendment as presented. Commissioners, this more or less seems like a technicality to me. Would anyone like to speak on this, or do we just want to go straight forward and provide a recommendation? All right, so all in favor of recommending these changes? Would someone like to make a motion other than me? Commissioner Haltimore.
Can the motion be to accept the recommendations as stated in the memo?
I think that sounds great. Staff, are you okay with that?
I can read the recommendation.
We can accept that for tonight.
So moved?
Please.
Second.
All right. So the motion is approved. Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, yes. This is why this is like the bane of my existence here. Okay. All in favor of the motion, please go ahead and say aye. Aye. That was unanimous for our staff. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is regular business. The first item this evening, yes, thank you. So I have a little bit of housekeeping that I completely forgot. I apologize. We need to approve the minutes for, I believe it was July 27th. I know this was all provided in everyone's agenda packet. Does anyone have any clarifications or concerns regarding the minutes for July 27th? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Stephen. Right back on. Now we'll begin with regular business. And tonight it's a deliberation for the housing element of the comprehensive plan periodic update. And Kristen, our senior planner, will be presenting tonight. So whenever you're ready, Kristen.
All right, so I'll introduce myself this time. Kristen Leeson, I'm with the Senior Planner with Community Planning and Development. And yes, our first topic tonight is the housing element. And it's just going over quickly the changes that were made as a result of the July 27th meeting. And then if you all have anything else to add, we can do that too. Okay, so and what we need from you is do the changes that we've made reflect your discussion on the 27th? So the first one was for A5 to clarify the word flexibility. There are two things that we actually did here. One was that we took out the word flexibility because developers need to know what's coming. They don't need flexibility. They'd want to know, be certain about what they're getting into. So the word flexibility was removed. And we said allow development standards to achieve additional multifamily residential densities, because there was a concern that what we were talking about was increasing densities in all housing areas, but really this is intended just for multifamily housing, and it came out of the Eco Northwest study as something that we needed to do. So hopefully that clarifies. Well, okay. The next one was we needed a comprehensive list for protected classes. So we took out the parentheses and just said including but not limited to race, color, and listed everything there. Does that look good? I got a thumbs up. Clarification of disproportionate impacts. So we changed it to in evaluating rezones, regulations that increase development capacity without resulting in negative disproportional impacts to underrepresented groups in the community. But this will also be expanded upon when we do the narrative. Because remember I said, or we said last time, the visions, the narrative, the visions, the discussions, and some of the background information is not here, just because that's too much to absorb. So that'll be expanded on when we include the narrative as well. Okay. C6, same thing, more guidance on terms to use. It will be expanded not only in the narrative, but also in the definition section. And I would ask that if there are specific terms that you would like expanded upon, if you could send us a list of those, we'll make sure that that happens, okay? Because there are a lot of words in here. So if you just let us know which ones you'd like clarification, that'd be great. I don't know why I stuck this one in here, or at least the policy, but asked for coordination with other elements. The policy is collaborate with populations most disproportionately impacted by housing cost burden and developing regulations. I think this had to do with, looking at utilities in other areas, or human services, or, rent assistance and that kind of thing. So we will, that'll happen when we look particularly at things like human services and utilities, transportation. That will all be looked at when we look at those elements as well. Are we good? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think that one came from me.
Mm-hmm.
This particular one, the coordination piece, that policy, I think it was listed under just housing supply. And so my question was, it felt like it needed to apply to other sections, right, of both the housing policy as well as in other elements. So the thing about utilities and whatnot was related to affordability more generally. But with this policy, my question was, it felt like too limited to just be under one of the kind of goals of housing.
No, that makes sense. We'll take a look at that. Okay. X6, just reword it as a policy, and so we just took out make amendments to and changed it to amend. Did that capture that? And this is similar to one up above. It's similar to C1, X11, needed clarity on disparities. And so again, we just added other negative disproportionate impacts to underrepresented groups in the community. Okay. Yes.
This comes back to the other one too. Will disproportionate impact, or I'm sorry, will underrepresented groups be defined in the definitions in the narrative?
As much as we can, yes. Yeah, I mean, I will say the state hasn't been super clear on it. All they ever say is underrepresented groups, and we're not the only ones who have the question. So as much as we can, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then this is the one I think you were referring to earlier, Commissioner Bader. King County, more policies that promote affordability. And it's recognized in the policies that are listed here, but again, it will be looked at in other elements, utilities, human services, transportation, those. So I went ahead and included next steps. We will continue to revise. We will make the change that was requested here. We will add the background information in here. We'll add the definitions just for housing if you all will send us a list. That would be helpful. And then you'll see it again in the fall. Okay. Any questions? Anything that wasn't addressed last time that I might want to address this time?
Commissioners? Commissioner Milligan.
I have to find it again. Thank you. Nina Milligan here. I'm looking at Housing Policy B3 on page 23 of the packet. And I may have already asked about it, but it's still looking the same. And that has to do with, sorry, go in here, get to it. Here we go. B3, this support development and preservation of affordable housing throughout the community, particularly in locations with good pedestrian access to existing and planned high capacity and frequent transit. And then we removed employment, services, and shopping. And it seems single-minded, maybe it's somewhere else, but I thought that all of those things were value added to the affordable housing.
Well, go ahead.
When staff reviewed the policy, Stephen Badua, Long Range Planning Manager, at CPD. When staff reviewed the policy, we actually found it limiting because the access for pedestrian services for getting, as I'm reading it, getting pedestrian access to existing and planned high capacity and frequent transit, it's more than just employment, services, and shopping. It's getting people access to housing, getting people access to any of the natural amenities or community amenities, and broadening. So we wanted to open it up a little bit more in terms of like what that access was actually.
Yeah, in conversation here, I think you could expand that list: employment, services, shopping, parks, schools, blah 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 blah. All these wonderful amenities for a housing community.
And we'll take a look at that one. There is a policy in land use that talks about putting housing close to commercial centers, close to services. It talks about putting neighborhood services into neighborhoods and not just the other way around. And I think part of this too, when looking at it after you and I had a brief conversation, I think this is under the affordability section, and even that could be moved, as Commissioner Bader stated earlier. That wouldn't be just necessarily for affordable either. That would be just housing in general. So we can take a look at not only expanding that, but re-expanding it to where it was, but putting it in a different section.
Quiet tonight. I think it's because it's the end of summer. Any other questions? I just had a couple real quick, mostly about the matrix. Kristen, do these changes, do they also reflect comments made by the public? We got some good comments as far as the housing element, public, or are these just the commission deliberations?
I was not at the last meeting. Some of the comments were made, or some of the changes were made based on public comment that was sent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then one other simple clarification. I noticed some of the boxes where it says reasons for change were empty.
Mm.
Is that just because nothing changed, or I think there was just one or two of them. And
Mm. I'm going to say it was just an oversight. I see one.
I think there were one or two. I just wanted to make sure
Mine
that.
too. Yeah, we can fix that.
But is it because the policy itself didn't change, or?
No, it's not, actually. So we'll go, just an oversight.
Okay, fair enough.
Put that in there.
Okay. Well, staff is looking to us to help them out. We will be seeing this, sounds like, later in the fall. But as far as what we have this evening, is everyone comfortable with what they see? Oh, Vice Chair Bader.
I have one really small thing that I didn't notice last time, but noticed this time because the other language in the policy X11, the language just feels really weak to me. So the policy is to identify gaps, and that's like, what does that do? And so it feels like it should be like identify gaps, to, right? Like strengthen or enhance or whatever it is. So I wanted to comment that.
All right, do you have what you need, Kristen, as far as making an awesome draft for us in the fall?
I do, thank you. And it'll even be better when you all send me words that you
Yeah.
would like clarified, or phrases that you would like clarified. Yes, I've been asked to mention that this is actually going to the Planning, Development, and Environment Council Committee on September 6th, just for their review, for their first review of it. And it includes, what we're sending them includes your changes. So I have time and I can get these changes in there as well. If you guys trust me that I will reflect what you've said here, I will include those changes and take it to council. Okay.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Looks like you'll also be presenting the second part of this evening. And this will, this will cover the land use element. And Kristen, when you're ready.
You'd think that I was standing here, I'd be ready, but I had to finish taking notes from the last presentation. So I'm still Kristen Leeson, Senior Planner, Community Planning and Development. And now we're going to talk about our first review of the land use element. And I just have to say up front, this one's a beast. Stephen and I have been laughing about that for a while. I tried to put it in the memo and he took it out. But it is, it's big, it's really big. And there's a lot of work that's been done on this one as far as reorganizing, adding, deleting, moving. So it's crazy. So we'll take whatever time we need to go through this first draft. It doesn't all have to be done today. Okay. Oops, move on me, please. There we go. So we're going to review and start deliberating. So our questions for you are what they were with the housing element. Do they accurately reflect the state and county policies? And actually there weren't any counties, so really do they reflect the state policies? Are there Issaquah specific issues that need to be addressed? And is there additional information that you need that would be helpful in evaluating the proposed amendments? And we'll come back to those. So the land use element sets the intent for development and preservation of the natural environment as well. So we're actually changing the title to land use and sustainability. It also guides implementation. So it's done through pieces such as the land use code, the city's strategic plan that we have, the shoreline master program. It guides our critical areas. So it a lot. So the monitoring piece of this, the state, I think as we mentioned with the housing element, the state is now requiring that we do a 5-year evaluation or sort of report card on how well our plan is being implemented. And then we also do, like you had tonight, periodic changes to the land use code and preferably annual amendments to the land use code. When we identify gaps or things that aren't working, go back and amend those at the end of the year. So just as a reminder, some of it, I don't have the background information here, but some of it is we have our future land use map. The designations show where uses will go, community facilities, mixed use offices, lower density residential, multifamily residential, and it shows our urban growth boundary, which is, urban growth boundary, which is the red line right there. And as a reminder, our capacity and target. So for our capacity, this was done in 2019. It was done through development up to 2018. We have a capacity for just over 12,000 housing units in the city. Most of those are in central Issaquah. And our target that was adopted was 3,500 new housing units by 2044. And then our jobs, we have just over capacity for just over 21,000 new jobs based on square feet and type of job, so forth. And our target for that for 2044 is 7,500 new jobs. And I mention this because one of the things that we are supposed to do is have land zoned for enough capacity to accommodate our targets. That's a big one. And that is, so you need to know what our capacity is and what our targets are. So tonight I'm going to work through the order of the matrix. I'm only going over the new and amended policies. And if you want to talk about deleted or moved ones, feel free to bring it up. I don't know if you would like to do that, Chair Voice, during the presentation or after the presentation, but I am happy to talk about anything that wasn't discussed here as well.
Are you going to be taking these amendment by amendment?
Pardon me?
Are you going to be taking these amendment by amendment?
Yes.
So I think if people feel like they want to jump in for one, please just raise your hand and introduce yourself. It could be a long presentation.
Not too long, it's me. Okay. Here we go. So the first one that changed is goal A. It was merged with policy A1 and conserve and protect natural systems from negative impacts of development. And jump in if you have any issues. Hopefully you have your matrix with you too, so you have the full policy in front of you if there are any. Okay. So A2, ensure development is consistent with the city's vision. And we just removed any redundant language that was in there. Because it included things like shoreline master program and critical areas. Those are critical areas and some of that. Those are in the land use code, so we didn't need to mention the stuff in the land use code. A3, encourage efficient use of land by allowing cluster housing. And we just removed language that was codified. So we're leaving the policy language there that says allow for cluster housing, but we remove the things like require, open space and utilities and stuff like that. It's already codified, but we just need the big policy that says do it. Continue to allow transfer of development rights. We just simplified that. That gets kind of big and messy. And then maintain character of forested hillsides. We simplified and removed codified language. This was put back in there back in 2016 when the Bergsma property was being purchased and it was potentially being developed, and people panicked and said, no, we have to protect our hillsides. So we were asked to put policies in there, and they were very specific policies because we didn't have language yet, and now we have language in the code. So that's why we took some of that out.
Okay, I have a light bulb idea. So why don't we let Kristen go through one slide and then we'll check to see if there's questions. That way we're not completely interrupting her every single time. But we can also give everyone an opportunity. So as far as slide 1, are there any questions, comments? Chair Bader?
Yeah, Sarah Bader. I just had a clarifying question. So on A3, the previous language was clustering of buildings within development housing. Does that mean cluster housing? Okay. I didn't know if that was like beyond housing.
No, that was for housing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kennedy?
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I'm looking through the matrix, and you were talking about things that were taken out of, say, policy A2. Like we took out shoreline, it went on to say shoreline master program, blah, blah, blah. And I'm seeing that language still in there. So you said we simplified and we took other things out.
You're right.
And I'm like, it's right there. So I wanted to clarify that I was looking at the right thing.
Oh, I just took out, we took out, and other development, let's see, critical areas regulations and other development regulations, because we talk about the land use code, and other development regulations and critical areas regulations are in the land use code. So that was what was redundant. Because we still need to leave programs in there.
Right. So you just happen to mention things that are still in the language.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because all of a sudden I wasn't sure if I was looking at the right stuff.
Sorry. We're good.
And I'll mention it now. Under goal A, and then it's under several of the other ones. The word city, someone must have done a search on the word city.
That was me.
Where it randomly appears. Okay, never mind.
So just to, I saw it, and unfortunately I didn't see that until after this went out, but I did, because it was the city, it's supposed to be lowercase c, and if it's just city, it's supposed to be an uppercase c. So I did a search, and then it changed everything, took it out of track changes, and I just didn't even notice it until it went out. So I'll fix that. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, though.
Any
Okay.
further comments? Please continue.
So A7, respect topographic character of each site. Again, we just removed language that has been codified. So this shall be done through building design, siting, minimizing height, all that kind of stuff. That's what the code does. But we still have the policy. Discourage expansion of the urban growth boundary. I just clarified what that meant. It didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense before. So I just said, we just said discourage proposals to expand it in order to protect the community's natural resources. A13, support goals of Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust. They have changed their language since this was last written. And so we just changed it to be consistent with what they say. And just so you know, when we do development, when we do signs, anything like that, the goal is to keep it as untouched by development as possible, so it still looks, and it should blend in. So, A14, integrate natural features into site design as amenities. Again, we've removed language that has since been codified, but the policy is still there. And then protect trees in urban environments. We moved B2 of this to the natural, or to the environment element, and then we simplify the remaining portion.
I think I saw some movement to the right side. Are there any questions as far as this slide? Clarifications?
Yes, thanks. This is Megan Altamar. I think the wording is right here. I'm way more comfortable with A13 as it's revised than as it was. Is there an option for the city if Mountain to Sound Greenway goes off track, right? If they suddenly want to put a racetrack in our forested area, like this no longer just says blindly support, which is great, but is there a way, if we start to diverge, that does this give us enough cover, I guess, if we didn't appreciate where their goals were going?
We'd be able to respond to that with the annual update, right? If we saw it going off track, we could amend that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other
Anything
questions
else?
on this slide?
Yes. Okay. C2 is in regards to where to focus future growth. Simplified it a little bit and included the Regional Growth Center. I'll tell you right now, I'm not thrilled with this one. I was going to go back and revisit it, but that's my personal opinion. So, moving on. Coordinate stormwater management facilities that serve multiple properties. We just, again, simplified it and removed codified language. Use stormwater solutions that protect receiving streams and groundwater. It referred to a federal requirement. We don't need to put federal requirements in our comprehensive plan. We're required to comply with that anyway. Again, the policy's still there. Incorporate sustainable development. We just simplified the words here. Going all the way down to L. A lot of that was removed. That's why we skipped all the way down to L. Just simplified it a little bit. Partner with the Issaquah School District for future school siting. Include compact schools as an option. And we simplified it and incorporated language from 2 or 3 other policies. We deleted those and then incorporated that language in here.
I just had a simple question before we move on to the next slide. So, not that these ones were points that you hit, but policy D4 and policy D5, they're almost identical other than the location. You guys are cleaning up all these redundancies. Is that location necessary to have 2 different policies?
So they both removed to the environment stewardship and climate resilience element. But I imagine they'll be edited there, and because we're not doing the edits in the land use element.
What does that mean?
Well, that means if there's redundancy, then once they're taken over, it'll be looked at there.
Okay.
In the other element.
And I can tell you the Stephen Padula, Long Range Planning Manager, the discussions with the environmental board on those 2 policies were actually, they were consolidated.
Okay, great. Any other comments on the slide? Mr. Bader.
Yeah, I have 2 different ones. So on the C2, I don't know what my comment is, but that felt like a really big policy. Like everything else is kind of like little steps and small things, and that one is like, this is where we're focusing future growth. And so I didn't know if it like, is that a policy? Is that a goal? I don't know what it is, but it felt like different than the rest. And so I know that's not helpful feedback, but I didn't know how to, just something about it felt different than the others.
Kristen didn't really sell it either. So there's that.
And then the other one is on the goal L, where I actually liked the previous language of like aiming to be a regional leader. That also felt like there was like a little bit more there to get behind than just incorporate sustainable development in terms of being a goal. I don't know if we like are shying away from wanting to be a regional leader, or if we can go for it.
I let you, yes. that was me. I just felt like we were stating the obvious. Of course we want to be a regional leader, but.
Commissioner Samweta.
Yeah, and then just for D3, just to clarify, you guys removed the NPDES, because that's found somewhere else, basically.
Right, it's a federal requirement.
Yeah,
So.
okay. But when someone is looking at this, they'll refer back to that federal requirement.
Right, it's stated in our code that you have to comply with the NPDES as part of this.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Carolyn Kennedy. So L3 about working with the school district. Love the first sentence, work with the ISD to identify for future school facility siting that meets, anticipated growth throughout the district. Wondering about the need for the rest of it. Siting includes compact schools to maximize land use. Are compact schools now going to be a requirement? So if this is a policy and we have that language in there, are we saying that's a requirement or just that's how we're kind of going to do it? Yes, that's going to be the need because we just don't have the land. The reality is they have to be compact schools, but from a policy perspective, is that language needed? Because aren't we just saying we're going to work with the district on siting needs based on projected growth?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, we'll relook at that one. That's a good point.
Commissioner Milligan.
I'll just chime in with you, Carolyn. I saw that too, and Nina Milligan. And I thought for a moment, no, wait, that's unnecessary. But then I thought, well, this is within the city limits. And comic schools are valued for their efficient use of land resources within the city limit. Well, maybe it's okay to look forward and say that we want to minimize the impact footprint of the school. and other compact school definition pertaining to playgrounds and sports. So didn't seem like, I'm just conversing. Might be okay.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Carolyn Kennedy, if we can continue to converse. So,
Yeah.
but I guess that was my question. I totally get it. They, out of need, they're going to end up being compact. I mean, Clark, they're going to go up. They don't have room to go out. That's just reality. Does it need to be a policy? Do we need to state they're going to have to be compact because this is how we want to be? We want them on a smaller footprint. Is it a policy or is it a nice to have, or is it just reality?
And I think that's a good point, and we'll relook at it again. It's one of those policies that was put in because we didn't have codified language yet, and now we do. So I will speak to others who know better than I.
Commissioner Kraft?
Like, it's, the broader question is, when you have codified language, you could probably take the how, like that one, out. And just, I like the fact that you simplified a lot of these. That's, we'll understand that. And then maybe there's less of a need.
Commissioner Samweta?
And then ultimately, wouldn't it be a decision with the ISD, with the school district, if they're going to go in the route of a conventional school or a compact school?
Yes.
And they would utilize the zoning or the land that's been provided to be able to make that decision. We just have to provide a policy where they have land available, per se.
Correct.
Okay. And the point I'm getting to is that we may not need that include compact schools as an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any others on that slide?
Are you smiling because of the music outside?
Right.
I am too.
We're being,
It's a little distracting, but it's
Yeah.
lovely.
being serenaded.
Okay, L10. Manage city-owned land in a sustainable manner was just simplified. But, oh yeah. Maintain M2, maintain regulations that promote that. Maintain regulations that promote compatibility between uses and provide character. Simplified it. Preserve views of Issaquah Alps, simplified. A new policy, mitigate the risk to lives and property posed by wildfires. This is a state requirement, very necessary in Issaquah, but also a state requirement. And N3, we just clarified it. It's allow small-scale retail and personal services in residential areas.
That wouldn't include things like food trucks. A long discussion about. Commissioner Kraft?
I did not bring my laptop, so I'm going off from memory here. So M9, what was that simplified from? I'm trying to remember.
Pardon me?
M9,
Mhm.
what was, you said it was simplified. I didn't bring my, oh, here it is.
Oh. There really wasn't much that was taken out.
Okay. All right. Whenever I hear about views, I think of everyone wants to protect their views, but want to build whatever they want to.
Maximize
It's
their
like,
view.
when I lived in Sammamish, it was like trees. I want to be able to do whatever I want on my land. I don't want my neighbors. The views are similar. That was clear. Thank you.
Commissioner Milligan?
I just want to comment about N3 because this was something that I was chanting a while back, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. So really like it. I don't know how it works with zoning, but I guess you get there later. How would you allow for these developments in a residential area if it's all residential owned?
You just allow it. So churches are allowed in residential zones, schools are allowed in residential zones, and you can change the permitted uses table to say, allow 4,000, small scale is 4,000 square feet, so allow 4,000 square foot grocery stores in
It
residential
would be in
zones.
the use table.
It would be.
In the residential use table. So it would start here, and then those details would work.
Yes. else on that one?
This isn't on the list, but the goal language for goal M feels like missing something about like creating opportunity or something like that, because it just says that like we're going to allow and accommodate growth that is fiscally responsible, responsive to community, and enhances and protects the natural environment. And it feels like there are other criteria that we might want to meet. I don't know if it's like
Any suggestions?
I can think about it. Like I said, it was something about like that, and maybe it's in that responsive to the community piece, but like about opportunity, like that. I don't know. I'll think about the language. And
Okay.
And we will see this anywhere from what, 3 to 4 more times, right? This particular piece, the land use.
You can.
That's what it said on your memorandum. Coming back, Commissioner Altamore.
Thank you, Megan Altamar. I keep going back to L10 and trying to read it and understand it. And I don't know why I keep getting stuck, but one place that I am getting stuck is the designing, managing, and maintaining landscapes. That's all it said. Like everything else is X'd out of there. So what do we mean with that?
I think words need to be added, rereading it. Designing, managing, and maintaining landscapes to maintain plant health. I realize that I took probably the 4 words before that are probably relevant and need to go back in there.
Okay.
Would that help?
Yeah, that would help.
Okay.
And then on A, is the definition of integrated pest management all the other stuff that used to be in there?
No. I'll have to look at it, but we define integrated pest management is something that we talk about in the code all the time. I'll go back and check. But oh no, I took it out because this is city-owned land is everything that's listed there. Public lands, rights of way, and then reduce reliance on chemical pesticides. That's actually in our ICAP, I believe. And then the protect endangered species and public health. We talk about that other place, protecting endangered species. We can put it back in there.
So do we need that at all if the integrated pesticide is somewhere else?
No.
So I would say either put some of those words back to make it mean something or take it out altogether.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I know this is nitpicky, but this one, I just keep going back and rereading it, and I want to get it. Thanks.
Commissioner Milligan.
Nina Milligan, thank you, Megan, because I was channeling Commissioner Krass on this one. Do we put the policy and how in it, or do we leave the how out to be handled in code or some other enforcement or action place? And if we just said manage city-owned land in a sustainable manner, is that enough of the policy? Do the such as's help? I don't know. So I'm with you. Either do them right or don't have them in there at all. Yeah.
Okay. I would say the only one that's listed there, and we could find a way to still include it, would be the public education programs. That is not codified and might be something that we would want to keep in there. But I'll work on it and find a way to make that work.
Yeah. Commissioner Altamore.
Megan Altamar. It's actually, see now, the creekside and wetland, is that picked up somewhere else? Because that one did seem to say something. Like, that one seemed worth keeping. So I wouldn't want to wipe out the whole thing unless we know that all of those are somewhere else.
Good point. And I'll check it because that's a program and not a regulation. So yeah, good point.
I think good with this.
Next to last slide. X2, develop amenities, services, and facilities for all types of families and residents. So we were trying to address equitable amenities and services. Sorry, I forgot. 03, provide community gathering spaces. We just simplified it. Goal P, focus growth in the Regional Growth Center and other mixed-use areas. We expanded it just beyond Regional Growth Center, which is RGC. P1, support urban core development as RGC. It emphasizes that work is to be done. I think it currently says maintain the urban core. Well, the whole goal is to make it grow or have development, so we just change it to support growth there. X3, explore opportunities to accommodate transit and transit-oriented uses, and so we're getting ready to start planning for a transit-oriented area when that comes, so this sets up policy for regulation. Those.
Commissioner Altamore.
I feel like I'm your nitpickiest one tonight, but I write a lot of grants. So on the one where it says residents and families, sorry, I lost my place. I'm scrolling through. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, if it's residents, it's residents, but it could be individual residents and families, or just say residents.
Okay.
Vice Chair Bader.
Yeah, Sarah Bader, on P1, I think the intent is fine. I had a comment on the language that didn't quite make sense to me. So it's like the density mix of uses and amenities that just didn't flow for me. And so I actually suggested language for this one. And so I have support the urban core's development as a regional growth center by encouraging density, mix of uses, and amenities, And if that helps to clarify that.
And I'm going to add the word allowing. Okay. All right. Anything else?
You're good.
Yeah. Last one. Okay. Q2, conserve productive forest resource lands. We just removed reference to hillsides viewscape because we have that so many places. Q4, realize mineral resource potential of certain properties. We just simplified it. There's no need to cite state law. Q6, require mineral extraction operations to use best management practices. We removed the state requirements because they have to comply with those. And then support comprehensive annexation of the potential annexation area. And the way it was before, it was like, include people. Well, that's part of your comprehensive annexation. You include people, you get public, it's just the whole picture. And since it was a goal, we made it a little broader.
Anything on this slide? Commissioner Milligan.
Nina Milligan, can you remind me of what's left of PAAs?
Just the East Cougar Mountain PAA, which is just south of Montreux and west of Bergsma property. And it is much smaller than it used to be. We reduced the size back and gave a lot of it back to King County in 2016. They took it over again. And so we have a small portion that's just developed with single family properties right now.
Thank you.
Any follow-up on this particular slide? Okay. We're not going to let Kristen off that easy. Now that we've seen the whole presentation. Any thoughts, opinions? Again, I believe in the memorandum it says we're going to be seeing this handful more times. So it's not the last time we're seeing it.
No, it's not.
But I think the edits, even as nitpicky as they sound, I think they're super helpful. Myself, I'm not to speak for Commissioner Kraft, I like the idea of it being simplified. Flexibility, I know right off the top we said not a word you want to see, but it's a little bit better when the city has a little bit of it while also still being able to certify. Anything else? Vice Chair Bader.
I just have a general question. There might not be an answer to it, but it feels a little like we were like, did the cart before the horse sort of thing with having done Title 18, and now we're looking at the policies that presumably guide what is now Title 18. And so I don't know, like, as we're thinking through this, and I don't know enough about land use code to like know what could be, but are we kind of falling into that cart before the horse, or are there things that like the city like wish you could have put in there, but we didn't do as Title 18, and so we're not? I don't know if that question makes sense, but.
Well, we haven't added anything in the land use element that wasn't required by the state. And meaning we also didn't add anything. We didn't have to add anything because we added something new to Title 18 that then wasn't included here. So no, I think we're okay. I think everything we did with 18 was in the what do you call it, purview, or in the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was,
yeah.
it complied with goals and policies that were already in the land use code. The intent is not changing in any of these.
Yeah, because it just struck me that there weren't like a ton of new policies, and I didn't know if that was like because we did it in Title 18 or because we did Title 18.
No, most of them are required by the state, and some are just expanding on or moving them around, separating policies or something.
Commissioner Milligan.
Thank you, Nan Milligan. Just process, kind of overall for regular business in both A and B, we did the housing element and the land use, and we're doing them at different stages. And first of all, I wanted to ask a question. The agenda says that we had action to do for the housing and deliberation for the land use. What was the action we did for housing? Did we do action, or is that intended?
Stephen Badua, Long Range Planning Manager. So the action for the housing element discussion was primarily just finalizing your recommendations to give to council for this initial draft. So it was that deliberation discussion. And it was dependent on how formal of action is going to depend on the discussion that the commission was going to have.
So was there an action that we are recommending this go forward to City Council with our support and recommendation?
It's not a formal recommendation. It's just changes for us to make, to take to them for their first review too, because this will be their first time seeing it.
So our role is just to workshop with you and not to take a position or anything about it. We're just here to help.
No motions right now. You will eventually.
Yeah, so then when would we make a motion regarding these comprehensive plan?
Not until the Q2 next year, sometime probably, I think it's May of 2024 is when you'll make your formal recommendation to City Council on the entire packet. And this will be a little bit like Title 18, where you all would make your initial recommendations, you do the initial draft, we take it to council, say, are we headed in the right direction? Is there anything we're leaving out? Then we'll bring it back here a couple times, and then we'll take it to them as a packet for one big recommendation.
May I continue?
Yeah, please.
So one thing I was thinking about when I was working over this material was that the housing element was particularly challenging for me because a lot of what was in there we could not change because it came from somewhere else. And I do think that this is an opportunity to voice support for the objectives of these policies that came from, say, the state or the county. But the way they were written here, I don't agree with all of them. So if you asked me, do you support and want to say yes to how the housing element is now written in entirety, I couldn't say that because there are a few things in there that I still don't like, but we can't change them because they are required by another jurisdiction. And I wanted to share that just to get the frustration out there so that maybe there's something. If you don't say anything, you don't get anything, right? And where we all have the objective to increase affordable housing, consider communities who are disproportionately impacted by rules and regulations. And I think we all agree on those things. So a couple of things caught my eye, and I want to share with you why, because I felt that they unduly burdened the city. Of course, they take away from local rule, but I wanted to focus mostly on things that could harm the city in some way, maybe financially. And one of the things that that caught my eye was the remedy inequities. And I think that we want these inequities to be remedied, but to say that the city must remedy them is implying to me that there must be money spent or dollars put forth. And I was concerned about how that might manifest. So that was something that I didn't feel like I could fully support. The other one was prioritizing affordable housing on surplus lands. That was another one that I thought in the city and local control or local rule allows us to look at how to use surplus lands for all needs, not just housing. Housing isn't the only need that a city supplies. Housing means cities supply places for fire departments, schools, community resources, other things, and not just affordable housing. So there were a couple things. So all I'm saying is that the process is interesting. We either have to say yes to all of it or not yes.
And in the
Yeah.
in the second one that you mentioned, it actually says in that policy if the land is deemed appropriate for housing. So it doesn't say just prioritize it. It says if it's deemed appropriate for housing. So we left that way. The other one that you mentioned, remedy, doesn't necessarily mean money. I mean, remedying means, you know, if you have a whole bunch of land that is just zoned for single family and all you can put there is single family houses, that eliminates a lot of people from being able to purchase there. So being able to allow different kinds of housing up on a hillside where that's a way of remedying it. That's not money, that's zoning. So it's not necessarily funding. It's not necessarily city funds that we have to use to do that. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I want to hear from Commissioner Krass, and just to mention that I think that word choice matters and can be used or misused in some ways in the future, and those were things that were flags for me. Thank you.
So I agree on, more broadly, there's a whole list. It's pretty overwhelming. I missed the last meeting. I went through all the big tables, and there's a lot there. And I think there's a small subset, and there's a few words that caught my attention. Remedy was one, require is another one. And maybe there's a work session that when you look at the long list, there's 20% of them that have more biting language that should take another couple turns with the group to say, hey, is this opening up to any unintended consequence? Or what does that really mean? Like the word remedy, that was one of my notes that jumped out on me, because that could be either have legal implications, financial implications, or could be misunderstood. So, but it's not all of them. It's just a very small subset, and it may make sense, going to your process question, of identify the very small subset and then really kind of working through a few of those.
If you could just send me what those policies might be, that would help us to focus a discussion for that.
Commissioner Samwita?
Real quick on so I'm new to the group. Is it okay for me to just send an email straight to you, or does it go to Ron?
Send it straight to me.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Samwita. I'm not sure, and I need to look at it again where it says the word remedy, but typically that follows, there may be something that's already been identified that may be an issue. So that's where that word remedy may come from. So putting those two together would be able to give us more understanding on the use of that type of language as well as the requirements as well.
Great, thank you. I guess just to clarify this, so the process for this moving forward for the housing element is between now and fall when we see this again. The idea is to send our edits, our concerns, Kristen, so we can get that baked in when we see this. Correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Send everything to Kristen. Okay. I know you had one more slide to present. We kind of went on a tangent going back to the housing element. Had one more for the land use, and we'll follow up kind of with the process for the land use element. Hopefully. Is everyone comfortable with as far as the housing element, what's moving forward?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I thought we were done with the land use thing, so I thought
I think we
talking
clipped,
about the whole thing. I
Kristen by one
misunderstood where we
slide.
were.
So I think we're okay.
And it's just this one. I wanted to run through the questions that we had in the beginning. And like I said, there are not any new county policies, but do they reflect the state policies accurately? There are a few of those. Are there Issaquah-specific issues that need to be addressed that are not addressed currently in the land use element? And is there additional information that would be helpful in evaluating this draft? And again, there's a lot of background information that's not provided here that I put some of it up front. I think I put the bigger pieces up front, but we will have more to add in the next draft.
I think the only thing for me is so I saw as far as like stormwater, I know there's, you know, a plan in place with now with the wildfires.
Mm-hmm.
Does earthquake fall in any of this? Or would that be in your comprehensive plan, like
It's in-
emergency
It's in the building code.
building codes?
Mhm.
Okay. But as far as, Commissioner Krass? Yeah, as far as, so that wouldn't go into comp plan as far as like emergency sheltering, all that stuff. That, I mean, if we're gonna have a wildfire section, you know, act of God section, I guess. I don't know how to say it any other way. I mean, I know flooding and all these things are kind of mentioned in other areas. I just, again,
Yeah. Stephen has a thought?
So in the discussions with the environmental board with the development of the new element, there's actually going to be sections of that that'll include climate resiliency. So addressing a lot of the emergency preparedness for earthquakes, wildfires, act of God events, where we want to be prepared for those kind of, but implementation wise, that's going to be more of an emergency management plan.
Commissioner Krass?
This is John Krass. This may be a fairly hot topic, but I'm not sure if it goes under land use, where we're starting to see more people camping in vans throughout the city. So is there a policy around enforcement of not allowing that for people who are unhoused camping within the city limits? Because I believe they're not supposed to, but we're starting to see more vans broken down, like beat up RVs starting to be, especially on like Rainier and then right near the freeway. So is that a land use thing or is that something different?
Not
Is
on the
my
right of
question.
way. That's a different issue. That falls under the police. The police are the ones to manage that. I don't know if anything's covered in the human services elements, Stephen, about the camping. And obviously we're required now to allow for shelters and emergency shelters in the city. So that's a place for people to go, but I don't know if there's
But
anything.
land use I think of is like, I think our public roads are land, and then, you know, being more stringent about not letting that be used for broken down RVs, start then accumulate. Ensure. The question is, where does that fall? Because I think it's an important topic.
Something like that, particularly for the right of way, is going to be either parking management more so than land use or.
And which group manages? deals with that?
I mean, you would have general parking policies in the transportation element, but specific to what should be allowed or not
So
allowed
under
in the right of way.
transportation, so I should talk to the person I live with who's on the transportation advisory board about that. All right.
Yes, yeah, I know you have someone to talk to about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Krass. Commissioner Altamore?
Going back to that question, didn't the city pass an anti-camping ordinance quite a few years ago?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with it.
We'll have to take a look.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
Yeah, I'm
wasn't-
not sure where that's, I remember when that occurred. I don't know if it is still in place, and I don't know what group covers that. But I would imagine that camping in vehicles would fall under that.
I remember the discussion, but I'm not sure if it applies to the right of way. We'll take a look at that.
So
and
that
get
would be
back.
where the vehicle is?
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
Commissioner Samweta?
And then just going back to what Chair Voice talked about with seismic activity, I think you referenced the building code. Does that also cover the emergency routes that may be required if one of those events happens? Or would it fall within here? Like the roads, basically.
So emergency routes would be a little more specific than what would be going to the comprehensive plan. That would be more in the emergency management plan.
Okay, okay, very well, thanks. And I was talking in the sense where it's something to be looking at, because earthquakes, they affect buildings, but they also affect roads as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Milligan.
Thank you, Nina Milligan. Chair, you have inspired me, so I did a word search on flooding. And I do see the policy that talks about decreasing flooding potential on city lands, but do we have decrease of flooding potential on all lands in our land use policy? Could you?
I feel like there's something in place, probably in the Shoreline Master Program. I think it would be there. I can check. And, you know, FEMA has their rules as well. But I will check. And, you know, we can do certain things on our property that we can't go in and touch somebody else's property, maybe. But I'll check in the Shoreline Master Program and see what that says.
Yeah, and I'm thinking how to balance the impacts of increased density, especially in the urban core areas. How could you balance that with also consideration of flood risk?
So potentially be able to just take out the word public and then have, yeah, let me see kind of where the boundaries are there.
Commissioner Samora.
Yeah, and then, well, to your point, I think the zone, and doesn't that, when they do rezones or zone, and that factors in the impervious area on the lots that are going to be developed or that are owned by that are owned privately?
We take a look at the impervious and what's allowed.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily, sometimes the impervious is what it is because yes, it might be adjacent to a creek and you don't want a lot of impervious surface there. So it's taken into account as well as the Shoreline Master Program and how far out, how much you can actually develop on that land.
And does it, to a certain extent, dictate how much impervious area can be on that lot?
Zoning dictates how much impervious surface you can
Yeah.
have. Yes.
So that in itself would reduce the flood risk.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally.
Commissioner Milligan.
Well, remind me, what is the impervious for the urban core?
For the urban core, it's 95%.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? So the lifeline, or the timeline, I'm sorry, for this particular, lifeline's a little longer. Yes, the timeline for this is, just looking at my notes, this is expected to come back 2 to 3 times.
Right. We'll come back to the September 14th meeting with changes that you all have, or, you know, proposals, amendments that you all have made here, just like we did with housing. And then we will take that to, we're also coming back next time with the neighborhood plan goals and policies, which will also fall into the land use element, but we wanted to talk about those separately. That's a whole new thing. We'll come back with that as well. And then that will go to the planning, development and environment committee, just like the housing element. And then you will see it at least once or twice again before the end of the year, probably once before the end of the year. And then once before the public hearing.
All right. Everyone comfortable with that? Vice Chair Bader.
Yeah, I have just a process question. So a couple of meetings ago, we had a training on how to apply an equity lens to our decisions. Is that something we're going to be intentionally doing as part of this process, either in a future review?
I'm looking to my right.
Stephen Batu, Long Range Planning Manager. So yes, that is something that we're hoping to give all the commissioners the tools to be able to apply themselves, as well as staff being able to apply, and then we can have those discussions. That's what the commission would like, more detailed discussions on that throughout each of the elements or comp plan, however it works. But the hope is to have those discussions as we're going through all the
Okay. So I think we could be more intentional then about having that as a policy question for consideration.
Okay.
And I think especially if we're going to go into conversations about potentially taking a stand against language, I want to be really intentional about what that actually means and what we want the city to aim for. So.
Okay. Yeah, we can include that as a question in.
Okay. Kristen, did you get what you need for the land use element portion? All right. That concludes our regular business for this evening. Reports, city council update. Looks like that one's going to Stephen.
Thank you, Chair Voice. So I have a few council updates. First, I missed the vote on updating the commission that late July, the city council approved the city moving forward on the Metro Flex program, which is going to be helping getting kind of flex transit connections to the Dallas and Squaw Mountain neighborhoods. So just wanted to give commissioners heads up about that program. Should be seeing more information in the coming month. The August was fairly quiet for city council. They were pretty limited on the number of meetings. So what's upcoming for September is September 5th. The city council is going to be adopting a welcoming week proclamation. And then on September 8th, there's actually going to be an event at the community center between 5 and 8 p.m. As part of the welcoming week. And then as what was mentioned before, September 6th, City Council is going to, or the Planning Development Environment Council Committee is going to be taking a look at the code amendments that you saw for the public hearing tonight, as well as taking a look at the housing element draft recommendations.
Stephen, may I mention too as well?
Yes.
On September 19th? Yes, on September 19th, there will be a discussion with the Social Services Council Committee regarding pioneer projects for Central Issaquah and getting development going there. And then there will be an affordable housing discussion, which will talk about policies, programs, and funding with the Council of the Whole on October 9th, I think. Yeah, is it 9th? Yeah, on October 9th. So it's just something you all might want to tune into.
We'll remind you again once we get close to those dates.
Great, thank you. This is for everyone watching on Issaquah TV, YouTube. Can you describe what Welcoming Week is?
I cannot, off the top of my head, Welcoming Week is really about the city trying to be more inclusive and welcoming to new residents, to existing residents, to people who aren't typically involved in city events, city discussions, and really trying to open up the door to get more involvement and welcome people to the city. I can send a link to the event and also for the proclamation. The city council will be adopting on September 5th. That'll have a lot more information that I can't think of right now.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot. That's great. Okay, no, thank you, Stephen. That takes care of reports. Finally, any other business announcements? Staff, commission. All right, well, it's good to see everyone. I know our summer is quickly dwindling. So our next meeting is 14th. Same time, same place. You said that we will adjourn tonight's meeting of the Planning Policy Commission at 8 p.m. Thank you.